Good morning, I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Rinner, and we're your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for your Invisible Toolbox. The show is sponsored by Tero International that focuses on the book Row and I co-authored, and each week we look at a tool for working more effectively with others.
So do you discriminate? Most of us would like to think we aren't guilty of discrimination, but actually research says otherwise. 25% of people was reported in a study that are discriminated against say it happens frequently enough that it has a negative impact in their workplace day to day. So it's broadly out there.
It is, and the stereotypes that we have of each other's, it doesn't matter if they're based on race, religion, age, gender, politics, those can have some serious implications in business. And not only can there be legal ramifications, but making assumptions about individuals from specific groups, it can cause some serious misunderstandings.
It really can. And today we're going to explore the dangers around stereotyping. And these are largely non-consciously held. They come to us as a result of our early programming, family of origin, cultural upbringing, the workplaces that we're in, our leaders, the media, our peer groups. All of these things conspire to the way we look at the world, the lens we view it through, and the people in it.
And one of the examples of stereotyping that's out there today is how the millennials have been labeled. We tried to debunk all of that in our book. They're labeled in so many different ways, and some of the labels are flattering and some of them are negative. They can be called technologically savvy. On the other hand, they're entitled. And is that really fair to do that to someone? No one likes to be labeled. Actually, we get offended whether it's a positive or a negative label.
And millennials aren't the only ones that we label. Think about the labels we've assigned to the baby boomer generation, that they're not tech savvy, they're resistant to change. And when we apply these labels to large groups of people, they easily could be wrong or at best are exaggerations.
They can, and workplace dynamic specialists argue that these generalizations can drive wedges between coworkers and generate a lot of miscommunication. In today's world, we've got retirees who are going back to work. We're having younger people who are job hopping. Everyone needs to be able to get along. And the clashes that can happen because of stereotypes can be costly and very time consuming.
And these unfair assumptions that we have huge impacts on our relationships and on our workplaces.
So today's program, we're going to dig deep into that whole idea of stereotyping, and we're going to take a look at the steps you can take to make sure that your stereotypes, if you have them, are not hurting someone or your organization.
And in our Invisible Tool of the Week, we're going to invite you to take a look at the relationships you have that may have been impacted by stereotypes.
In our development challenge, we're going to provide you with some ways to manage your stereotypes and recognize if they might have negative connotations and the risks with that.
And we're very much looking forward to our Ask the Expert segment, where we're going to welcome Wayne Ford to our table. Oh my goodness, what an amazing resume he has that we'll share with you a little later in the show. And we're also going to share a couple of featured social media posts. There's a TED Talk and a fascinating article that you'll find.
There are. So if you're following along in the book, we're on chapter 24. The title is The Dangers of Stereotyping. And if you don't have your own copy yet, scroll down, click the link below, get yours so you can follow along in future shows. So let's get started.
So think about that word stereotyping. Most of us, when we hear that word kind of has a negative connotation to us. So would you be surprised to learn that actually stereotypes can be a positive thing? Because they allow us to really acknowledge and notice the differences. There's some real differences among people.
They do, and it has a historical root. Scientists say that stereotypes originally in ancient times served a purpose because when we clustered people into groups with expected traits, then we were not really on sensory overload of having too much information. We were able to group people, and those negative stereotypes could actually assist in our survival. But in today's world, in today's workplace, they can be harmful.
And we have to absolutely challenge them. And that is challenging because we're hardwired to learn what these stereotypes. So neuroscientist Hugo Spears of the University College in London, he found something pretty fascinating in his research. See if this is true for you. Our brains respond more strongly to information about groups of people when it is presented to us unfavorably. And so much of the media is like that.
Yes, it is. And it's interesting to note that an individual's intelligence can actually have an effect on whether or not they negatively stereotype. In a journal of experimental psychology, it suggests that smart people are actually more predisposed to have negative stereotypes. And what happens is, because they're smart, they read too much into a situation and then they draw inappropriate conclusions about someone.
So that's bad news for our viewers because we know you're smart people. But here, there's also some good news, and that's that not only do smart people stereotype maybe more quickly, they're also quicker to unlearn the stereotypes if they choose to do that.
They are. And Jessica Kriegel is an author of a book called Unfairly Labeled: How Your Workplace Can Benefit from Ditching the Generational Stereotypes. And she says that all kinds of stereotypes are damaging because they lead to individuals actually being denied jobs and promotions.
And we see that many across a wide range of things. And what Kriegel advises us is something that we all know. First, become aware of the problem. They say to solve a problem, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge you have one. And instead of talking about the differences among people or among generations, instead let's just start talking to people and let's talk about what's going on inside our organizations.
So psychologists say you can fight against those instincts by challenging your thinking and getting to know people that aren't like you. And you can not stop unproductive stereotyping unless, like everything else, you realize you're doing it. You have to be conscious, and that really leads us to our invisible tool of the week.
And it is time to present our invisible tool of the week. Those of you following along in the book, you'll find us on page 56 in a chapter called The Dangers of Stereotyping. The tool itself is to challenge your stereotypes.
And so to do that, we have to be conscious, but we can also take a moment and just analyze our recent interactions. And in those interactions, were we impacted by a stereotype? Was there a stereotype we were holding? And if so, was that helping that interaction or holding it back?
And here's a few other tips from Forbes contributor Megan Brio. She says once you know what the negative stereotypes are that you're holding, try to debunk them.
And that's a good one, isn't it?
That is a good one.
And once you do know who and how you're stereotyping, then you want to train your brain to stop doing it. So if you meet someone new, really take a read on how you're feeling intellectually and emotionally. And if you're forming a stereotype, try to put it aside and just be present in the interaction.
So
get to know the person.
And those are two really hard things to do, but here we've got another one for you. We need to make this a habit, so you can't just do it once. And as we know, to make things a habit, we have to do things ongoing. So challenge yourself at least once a week to have a meaningful conversation with someone in the past you might have stereotyped. Well, it is time for our development challenge. And in this week's development challenge, we challenge you to use and manage your stereotypes for good.
So being conscious and aware of your stereotypes is necessary, as we've said, but also what factual information can you add to what you know so that you can have a more reliable read of what's actually going on, or just the read of the other person.
Absolutely. And second of all, be flexible. Be open to changing your mind about some of the stereotypes you might hold.
And describe, don't evaluate. So don't value difference, just describe. And that is a really hard thing to do. We go right to actually evaluation before we describe. So just describe what differences exist.
Being conscious of the stereotypes that you hold is one of the most powerful tools in your invisible toolbox for improving workplaces.
So let's take a look at our top Tero social media posts of the week.
And those of you that follow Tero on social media already know we post useful links and content several times every day. We're going to feature 2 of those posts today.
And our first is a popular TED Talk video. It actually has a really provocative title, Can Prejudice Ever Be a Good Thing? Speaker Paul Bloom discusses stereotypes and how they can be natural and rational, but he talks about the key is to understand how our biases are operating and really being able to get a read if our stereotypes are going wrong. And so it's really a fascinating video.
Absolutely.
It's going to be on all Tero social media platforms today.
And our second featured post is from the American Psychological Association. It's an article entitled Overgeneralizing the Generations. Great read. It'll be on all Tero social media platforms on Wednesday. And now it's time for one of our favorite segments of the program that we call Ask the Expert. We're delighted to welcome to our table today Wayne Ford. Now, let me share a few things about Wayne. He's a former Iowa legislator, founder of Urban Dreams. This is an organization, a nonprofit that advocates for improving life for the poor and minority neighborhoods. co-founder of the Brown Black Presidential Forum, which is designed to get presidential candidates talking about this. I'm not done yet. He currently owns his own consulting firm, and just this past weekend, I understand you were flattered with an honorary degree from Drake. You already have a degree from Drake.
Yes.
So welcome to our
It's a
table.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for being with us, Wayne.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, before we get started, could you tell our viewers, you have been such an advocate for equity issues for undeserved communities. Can you just share a little bit of that with us?
Well, I'm from a single mother, so I was born in 1951. And so I've always been challenged toward the way I came up because my mother was not married and she had to take me to her sisters. So I came from North Carolina, but I lived in Washington, D.C. So I came up in a situation with a single mother, inner city, Washington, D.C. So all the dynamics of racism, you don't have where's your father? All those things happened to me at a very early age. I'm in my 60s now. But it affected me towards sensitivity, equity, and all the issues I've dedicated my life to. Because people ask, where's your uncle? Where's your mother? I mean, what's wrong with your color? So I've been getting that from day one. I was born in 1951, y'all. So it's been a journey, but I think God gave me a spirituality that we're going to give you this kind of experience to make sure you can impact people, which I've been doing for decades.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Well, we're talking about stereotypes today, and many people thought with the election of a black president in 2007 that our days of racial stereotyping and discrimination were all done. But in recent years, we've seen highly publicized events. Over your lifetime, how have you seen things change in regards to stereotyping people of color?
Good question. I'm a baby boomer, so I remember in North Carolina seeing colored and white bathrooms. So you had to be a certain age to even see this.
Right.
I remember seeing that, and I remember my grandmother saying, "You go that way instead of that way," and I never knew what that meant, but that was just the way we lived. Things have changed. We don't see colored and white bathrooms, but we still see it mentally.
Yes.
Because when you see me, you automatically start thinking things. When I see you, I start thinking things. So we got some challenges that we have never really dealt with. President Bush, the first President Bush said, until we start dealing with the issue of race, we're never going to be honest. So we're not dealing with race, and that's why we got all these issues.
That's so true. Why do you think it's so hard for people to get beyond the stereotypes of individuals that are different?
Well, I got to say one question. It must be fear. I must be candid with you.
Yeah.
I went from 1969, I got a football scholarship to Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is. Mayo Clinic took care of my leg, thank God. But the bottom line is, just visualize, this is 1969, I'm only black on the football team. And a scene happened, and I'll never forget this. I was sitting on the back of the bus, we was going to Canada, and I was very scared because Canadians, lumberjacks, I was young, I was scared. I said, hey, I'm only black on this bus. And what happened changed my life. The white guys stood up and said, Wayne, if they mess with you, they mess with all of us. So in war, we fight together. Blacks and whites, ladies, females, everybody fight together. There's a common denominator. I want to go back home. We never got a common denominator about race. Now here and since in the 60s, I'm in a bus going to Minnesota. I'm scared because I'm only black guy on the bus. I tell my friends, they said, Wayne, if they mess with you, they mess with me. That changed my life. So we need those kind of experience, which we all get, but I moved on mine. My feelings about white folks changed that day, and I was 17 years old.
Wow, what a great story.
It is. You've done so many things over the course of your career. What are you most proud of that you've done to improve the problems of race and inequity?
Well, from a presidential standpoint, I got to get my politics in here. It's two things. We did a brown and black presidential forum. I was number one in the country. Everybody been coming here. Back in the 70s, I was Jimmy Carter's minority education coordinator when he ran for president. But I noticed everybody was coming here, and I kept saying to myself, let's get a minority opinion. This is back in the 70s. And someone told me, put a group of minorities together and have them ask the presidential candidates questions when they come here. Oh, Wayne, you can't do that. You ain't got no power. I was just out of Drake University. I fooled them. In 1984, when Jesse Jackson first ran, we had the brown and black presidential forum. And it was C-SPAN's first road out to the White House. C-SPAN got a show called Road to the White House. Well, guess what the first road to the White House was? Our brown and black presidential forum. So that presidential election, was a long time ago, but our last one was at Drake University, and we had everybody who ran back then. So I've been very blessed to have a dream. And when you tell me no, you're really telling me yes. I want to say that again. When you're telling me no, you're really telling me yes. Because all that does is it gets me upset. One of my great comedians was John Belushi on Saturday night. And what he did was, when he got upset, his energy, and he would run around and he would do all that, I always call myself, a black John Belushi, because when he, energy-wise, I can see him doing this right now. But what that did was, what he was so great was, he got his energy and he moved on as a comedian. I get my energy to move on as a politician, and that's one thing. The other bill I've done was the Minority Impact Statement. 2009, I was rated by the Citizen Project in Washington, D.C. as the worst place for blacks to be at, because so many blacks were getting locked up here. We were number one for incarceration of black males.
That's not something to wear proud.
As a legislator, I'm the only black legislator, again, being only black, I said, we got to change this. So I went to D.C., Citizen Project, looked at Mr. Mark Meyer, who's in charge, and said, what can I do to change it? He kind of looked at me, you the only black legislator in Iowa? He kind of laughed. I said, don't laugh at me, Mark. What can we do? Well, 2 years later, Iowa became the first state in America to implement the Minority Impact Statement, which does one thing. Before the governor, he or she signs a bill, he or she knows in criminal justice, well, this would affect minorities this way. So they can never say, I don't know what's going on. Minority Impact Statement. So I think the two biggest things I've done was the Surrounding Black Presidential Forum, which is the oldest minority presidential forum in the world, and the Minority Impact Statement. Again, I was the guy, when the guy said, Wayne, they mess with you, they mess with all of us.
What a great story.
Yes.
Such a great story.
Yes.
One last thing,
Yes.
What suggestions do you have for people watching today, ways that they can affect negative stereotypes at work? What can we do?
So, I want to get complex. I want to say I'm about Einstein, and I want to do, Napoleon, and I got a complex, because I'm sure I want to give you something really complex, but it's not that complex. Mm-hmm. It's right on the tip of your nose. I recognize that we are the same. That we live a life, we try to take care of our families, and we die. That's universal. That's not black, white, rich, or poor. By growing up a bastard child, to be candid, because my mother and father wasn't married, and I'm okay, I can call myself that. My mother said one of her greatest dreams was, Wayne, I'm glad you did okay, because when I became Representative Wayne Ford, my mother was up there. And she looked down at me, and we both was crying, because I was the child that she gave away, and the rest is history. So, no fear. This is what God gave me. I'm black, I'm black. I'm white, I'm white. Okay, this is why I got blood. Once we can get past that common, and we all recognize we all got common denominators, we want to live, take care of our families. All that little, I don't like you because of your color or you're a woman, that goes out the window. I think we have played games with this, and no one is serious. I'm very serious about it, and I made a difference.
Wow, you certainly did.
Thank you so much for being with us
Thank you for
today.
being with us. And thanks to all of you for being with us today. If you missed any portion of the program or would like to share it with others, you'll find the entire program on Tero's YouTube channel. Join us again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central, where we will explore another tool in your Invisible Toolbox.
And now it's your turn. We welcome your feedback and suggestions for future shows. You can email those to ideas@yourinvisibletooolbox.com and find us on your favorite social media platform. And a great thank you to Wayne today, our guest, thank you so much.
Thanks for being
To
here.
Kyle Plummer, our Director of Marketing, and I always want to say he's
the director of our
this
show, too.
And to Rachel Trainum, our camera person today. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you, and that's a wrap.